Welcome to another edition of the Voice of Palestine, Voice of the Palestinian People. It's March 26, 2014, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Qawas. This week we are interviewing Ehab Lotayef, an Egyptian-Canadian poet and activist. We will talk with him about the shocking developments in Egypt, especially the recent 529 death sentences handed down by the Egyptian military junta, as well as their recent moves against the Gaza Strip. We will also discuss the objectives of the Egyptians Worldwide for Democracy and Justice, a group that was formed recently, of which Ehab is a member. Good afternoon to you, Ehab, and welcome again to the Voice of Palestine.
Good afternoon, Hanna. Thank you for having me on the Voice of Palestine.
You know, it's really depressing to see what's happening in Egypt because, from, during Nasser, where it was the castle of the resistance against Israeli occupation of Palestine, to the collaborationist policies that are taking place here, in addition to, to the internal suppression of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, etc., etc. So, what do you think? What's happening there?
When you see a state in the size and history of Egypt going through a phase like what it's going through right now, when you see announcements of equipment that will cure AIDS and hepatitis C without any medical scrutiny for such announcements, when you see a verdict like what we saw yesterday sentencing 529 people to death in 2 short sessions of the court, you realize that the state is in a complete status of imbalance. Mm-hmm. It is not at all, if we're trying to analyze what's happening in Egypt right now, I think the simple analysis is that there is a state of imbalance and misguidedness and loss of focus and direction. And it really is a result of particularly the 30 years of Mubarak rule that destroyed, unfortunately, I'm not going to only say destroyed the country, but destroyed a lot of the credibility of the Egyptian person himself as a citizen. Of course, within this state of loss of balance that Egypt is going through, every interest group is fighting for its own interest, and the people remain to be the general population that has no voice remain to be the ones that are losing and suffering and continue to lose. Within that environment, the people who just want to make money find their way through to make money and abuse the poor citizen. We find that the people with political ambitions who are bought by or put their alliance for different reasons with external powers or with states, with other countries, they just work for that goal that they are working for, and there are no checks and balances. Mm-hmm. And the state of oppression just increases to anybody who speaks against anything that is happening, where there are so many wrong things happening, but a lot of people inside Egypt can't even see them because of the media brainwash that is going on and on and on in an unprecedented state.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, correct me if I'm wrong, I hear this, that the 529 death sentences were handed down for killing one police officer. Am I correct, or the media was exaggerating?
It wasn't accurate to say that, but it is true. The only death among the charges that were directed to those 529 was the death of one police officer. There were other charges that could also, under Egyptian law, lead to a death penalty within the charges that they were accused of. But really, that is not the issue. You know, if they were even sentenced for killing 1,000 people, how can you inspect the evidence against 529 people in 2 sessions of the court, one of which was, as far as we hear, was as short as 30 or 45 minutes. It is a total breakdown of any justice system that anybody can imagine. And that's what I was saying. How could you even if you want to oppress and you want to, how can you not see that such an action is as simple as destroying all credibility of any system those in power are trying to build? It's really a disgusting situation.
I guess the kangaroo courts, pale in comparison to these Egyptian courts.
Honestly, even the Spanish Inquisition and all the historical misses we hear about are I don't think anything reached this stage. I really don't know which judge in the 21st century, in his right mind, even in the darkest countries, darkest political or socially status countries in the world, can just allow himself or herself to issue such a verdict.
And the reaction, was really positive in general. The UN Human Rights Commission issued a statement saying it's against international law, and Code Pink issued starting a campaign against it. What do you think of the other reaction from the media and the official governments in the West?
I think that if we get to the governments of the West, I think we have to be more careful, because, as I said, this verdict is too ridiculous for anybody not to speak up against it. The media in the West is having a field day. They love to ridicule developing countries and non-Western countries, and this gives them the opportunity. That's absolutely, because nobody can keep quiet when they see something like that, and that pushes the politicians in the West to be forced to say something. Yes, the speaker the official speaker of the Foreign Affairs in the United States also condemned this. The Ashton, of the European Union, also condemned this. But when I come to those entities, I ask myself, and I want everybody to ask, what are they going to do beyond this condemnation? They are still very much silent about what's happening in Egypt, and they're not trying to change things in a real way.
Actually,
go ahead.
Actually, if anything, they are empowering this infamy.
Absolutely.
So, like you said, they're not going to do anything about it. They're just paying lip service towards what's happening. And it's an opportunity to show how backward the third world is, and how specifically the Arabs and Muslims are, how backward they are. They don't say that they are their clients in the region and that they are empowering them to stay in power. Especially with their relationship with Israel, which been more exposed recently. The Haaretz wrote an article last week and said that Egyptian army officers and officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, visited Israel, and they were hosted by the the IDF to coordinate, their mutual interest. And in the article, they said, the title of the article actually, that Israel, the article in Haaretz, the Israeli paper, the title was that Israel asked the U.S. to supply Egypt with the Apache helicopters that I think they stopped delivery on them. So if Israel is asking them, we know what the lobby in the U.S. will do to make sure that they are delivered to Egypt. So what do you think of this really relationship, which is really what do you call it, a badge of disgrace on the forehead of, as we say in Arabic, on the forehead of the Egyptian military?
Well, let's look at this from few angles. One angle is that this might be at this stage more obvious and more in your face, but this kind of cooperation has been going on under Mubarak in a very quote-unquote healthy way. They were always doing Israel's bidding to a very large extent. When we look at the current situation in Egypt, we realize that the Egyptian government has one of the cards it's playing with the Egyptian people, and unfortunately is succeeding, is the hatred towards the Palestinian cause. I'm not going to say the Palestinian people as a whole, but at least the Palestinian cause, and in particular Gaza and Hamas. So they are playing that card to gain support among the population, that they are looking at Egypt first, and they're going to be against any movement or any group that makes the situation in Egypt worse, and that the Hamas government is a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood and is Muslim Brotherhood actually, and it's doing and supporting terrorist actions in Egypt. So they're playing that card. So this is number two. In addition to the original cooperation that existed, there is this added value cause that they are undertaking. It is unfortunately increasing their popularity among the Egyptian people. And then we get to the third level, and the third level is a very simple level as well. Every group in Egypt today is willing to be a client of any force in the world that's going to give them any kind of support or benefit. And obviously, clearly, Israel is very clever in playing its cards when it has an opportunity. So Israel gaining favors and controlling parts or all of the Egyptian military in this current state, and I repeat it again, in this current state of loss of balance where the whole country is in, is very much expected and is not strange at all in any way.
You mentioned the situation in Gaza. Even during Mubarak, they let the tunnels, exist. They were trying to control them, but they never destroyed most of them, like the new Egyptian regime is doing. And not just that, it's over 40 days now. I'm not sure what happened today, but over 40 days the Gaza Rafah crossing is being closed, consecutive 40 days, which really chokes the lifeline to Gaza. No one can get out, no one can get in, and this is really atrocious. It's, simply put, it's a war crime. What do you think?
Absolutely, it's a participation, at least, in a crime against humanity. What's happening in Gaza is getting worse and worse to a level. I mean, every time we say that it's become unbearable and it's reached rock bottom, it gets worse again. This kind of increase of pressure on the people of Gaza by closing the tunnels, by closing the Rafah crossing, is is very shameful, and it is a crime by all measures against the population of Gaza. No matter what the excuses that are being brought forward are, it is a crime against the human beings that are living in Gaza. And I like to believe that one day everybody who participated in that will be asked to
will be brought to justice.
To brought to justice, asked about what they did. Yes.
Yeah, I hope so too, because these criminals shouldn't get away with murder and without punishment. The situation in Gaza is really getting really bad, and the people there, especially after the storms that happened over winter, where they get flooded, etc. They end the electricity and all these things. So it's really amazing how they are surviving. I know you have contacts with people in Gaza. Could you tell us, how they are coping with the, economic situation and the lack of electricity? I mean, here in Toronto, there was a storm that cut the power for 2-3 days. They cried wolf, for we didn't hear the end of it. I mean, Gaza faces that situation on a daily basis, and nobody is really concerned here in the West, at least.
And the situation in Gaza, as I mentioned, is going from bad to worse. It's really going downhill quickly, and the situation with electricity, for example, as you mentioned, it's just the number of hours that electricity is supplied in Gaza is decreasing more and more. And I really here would have to give a positive report from what I deal with the people in Gaza. And as you know, we deal with the people in Gaza quite regularly as we are working on the Gazas Ark project. On a daily basis or a bi-daily basis, we communicate with people in Gaza. And at least that they know when they are going to have electricity and when it's going to be cut, because the government is trying to make people's lives as livable as possible. But what's happening is that there are always surprises. There is in the time where things change, it's very difficult even to keep those 2 hours where there's going to be electricity. It's even difficult to maintain those. So the situation just gets more and more difficult all the time. It's getting more and more difficult all the time. And till when will the people manage to survive? I don't know. But for us living here in Canada or in any Western country, to consider that the people in Gaza are living is atrocious in itself. They are not living. There is no work. There is no stability. There is no security. There is no safety. There is no food. There is no sewage treatment. There is no regular maintained services of any kind. People are not living there. They are coping with a situation that's becoming less and less human by the day. And as we were saying, I mean, the last 6 months, 9 months have become more of a nightmare after Egypt is doing what it's done to make their lives even more and more difficult than it was by Israel already.
Yeah. You mentioned the Gaza Ark. Is it still on schedule? Just to let our listeners know. And
Gaza's Ark is still on schedule. We are still hoping to sail within this spring. There are many difficulties that face us and are facing us, but with the support of many of our donors, with the support of a lot of our international partners, we are managing to cross the obstacles we are facing. At the end of the day, nothing is guaranteed, or nothing that we can make sure is going to be available in Gaza. We can say for certain that it will be. But till today, The building process is going on. I would be happy to say that we're reaching the last phases. There are some bits and pieces that we are very worried that we won't be able to find or get into Gaza at all that are needed for the boat. But we cross every hurdle when we reach it. I tell you, Hannah, it is in itself an education process about how people living in such situations live and cope with what's around them. We have to cope, and we're doing the same.
Okay, I'd like to go back to Egypt and the military junta. You know, on the International Women's Day, Code Pink tried to send 100 women delegation to Gaza, and it's not just they stopped them at the airport and turned them back. They assaulted one of their founders, the Media Benjamin, who's a co-founder of the Code Pink, and they broke her shoulder basically and sent her back on a stretcher. So you know, I mean, this level of inhumanity and outrageous behavior towards people who are trying to support the Palestinian people is unforgivable. What do you think?
You know, you were comparing earlier what's happening now with what was happening during the Mubarak years. I organized with Media Benjamin, with Code Pink, the Gaza Freedom March in 2009, in the late 2009. And we mobilized 1,400 people to go to Gaza from all over the world. And all those 1,400 people got into Egypt in December of 2009. So nobody did not get into Egypt. And at the end, when we put a lot of pressure and we demonstrated in Tahrir Square, that was before, 2 years before or a year and a half before the 2011 uprising in Egypt, they allowed us to send one bus to Gaza. And we refused because we said we're here a delegation of 1,400, and all the delegation of 1,400 should be allowed to enter Gaza. Contrast this with what happened in Cairo airport 2-3 weeks ago. The delegation of 100, among them only 7 or 8 women that managed to slip through the cracks managed to get into Cairo. All the others were held in the airport and deported back out. And some of them, like Medea and a couple of others, were arrested, and Medea was abused in the way that we all know about by now. So this is, again, it is a part of the non-caring about anything that this current Egyptian government is feeling, that it doesn't have to report or conform to any standards that the whole world is conforming by. It gives itself the right to abuse. It's abusing its own citizens. It's even abusing international activists and international peacemakers. At the same time, the situation inside Egypt about Palestine, about Gaza, has reached a point of no compassion at all. And all the medias are drumming on the same, or following the same beat, that Gaza is only a problem for us, that the Hamas government can only cause us more and more difficulties, so we will not help them in any way. And this is how things are being done in Egypt today.
You know, also they are participating in the whole rearrangement of the political situation in the Middle East by really endorsing people that are not part even of the Palestinian Authority, let alone the Palestinian struggle. You know, like recently they tried to promote Dahlan, who was kicked out of Fatah and of the PA, and they you know, I mean, there was an article by Dr. Joseph Mas'ad in Al Jazeera. Unfortunately, Al Jazeera published it for one day and then took it down without explanation. It's called the Dahlan Factor, and people who want to read the article, it's on the Intifada website. But in it he says basically that Egypt is trying to promote Dahlan to be the next president in Palestine, because he's the choice of the Israelis, and everybody knows his relationship with Israel and the U.S., the CIA, basically. So they're really trying to be part of this new imperial rearrangement of the Middle East, and they're trying to impose on the Palestinian people a settlement that even Abbas is not accepting. Abbas, the collaborator with Israel, is not accepting. So this role, again, politically is really dangerous and puts Egypt at odds with the liberation movements in the whole Arab world.
I'm happy that you analyzed it this way, because Egypt itself, again, at this point, those in charge in Egypt, I don't think they are making any decisions. I don't think they have themselves interest to defend. They are doing the work of the highest bidder. Mm-hmm. And you said it right. Dahlan is being promoted by Israel, basically, mm-hmm. and Egypt is allowing him because it is doing Israel's bidding. I don't believe that there is any vision, even vision of self-interest
mm-hmm.
among the rulers of Egypt right now. There is a total state of loss of focus and loss of direction, and they're selling themselves and the country, unfortunately, to the highest bidder.
Yeah, and I was reading also that it's one of the few military forces in the world that control large percentage of the economy, and I read just last week they increased this percentage in the Egyptian economy. So they again, Dahlan did that. He enriched himself from the taxes in Gaza before he was ousted. But the Egyptian regime and the Egyptian military in specific, control many of the economic institutions in Egypt. Could you tell us a bit about that for our listeners to know what's happening there?
Well, it is a very peculiar situation, actually, and it is inexplicable and undefendable. I think that it started under Sadat. Under Nasser, there was an attempt to promote and really build a military industry to enable Egypt to a certain level depend on itself and not be dependent on external arms in everything. I think with the peace treaty and with Sadat's veering towards a different mentality, the industry apparatus of the armed forces turned into producing things other than weapons, things that start from house equipment, domestic equipment like washers and dryers and radios and whatever, to doing construction work like building bridges and building roads and whatever, which could be a part of the task of militaries around the world in times of war or during military operations. But they expanded in that into the civilian industries, mm-hmm. And with all of that in place, it started also to own large chunks of land, which is originally given to the military to use for military camps, etc. Large sections of Cairo basically are owned de facto by the Egyptian military. So the Egyptian military became an empire in itself, and it became a interest group in its own to defend its own interests. And one of the reasons that they could not accept the Muslim Brotherhood or Morsi as president is that there was slowly a movement to expose that and to take back what belongs to the country, back to the country rather than leave it in the hands of the military. One of the reasons they rewrote the constitution after the 2012 constitution that was passed under Morsi is to ensure that there is no civilian oversight over the military in any way, shape, or form, or over the finances of the military in any way, shape, or form. The military officers, the officers in the Egyptian army, get bonuses from this military empire that is owned, from this industrial empire that's owned by and operated by the Egyptian military. So within this picture, I think it becomes clearer to the listener why the military is heading or spearheading this coup and the current government in Egypt, to protect its own interest as an interest group, not as an entity that is looking for the benefit of the country in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. You think the Pharaoh's era is back in Egypt, where the Pharaoh owns everybody, including the people, which is really a sad story about the situation in Egypt. I know you are a poet, and there is a poet, I'm not sure if you know of him, Omar Hazik, I think his name, who was handed a sentence of 2 years prison by the military, and PEN International protested about that. Do you have any idea why they arrested him and why they convicted him? I mean, he's a poet, for God's sakes. I'm sure he didn't carry a gun.
No, I'm not familiar with this case in particular, Hanna. But again, I would at this point believe anything that is told about what can happen in Egypt. But they don't shy away from trying people and convicting them and imprisoning them non-end for doing nothing really, like the Al Jazeera crew that among many other journalists. I mean, we look at the Al Jazeera crew because they're internationals, but there are lots of Egyptian journalists themselves who are imprisoned just for being journalists. And by the way, I mean, it is a symptom of total disregard to any human rights. And what is really puzzling me, and I think it will continue puzzling me for a while because it doesn't seem that's going to end anytime soon, is how certain people, many people in the Egyptian, what we should expect to be educated or informed classes, are accepting this, and they give excuse to it in very ridiculous ways. By the way, while we were talking now, I just saw a piece of news that Al-Sisi resigned as Minister of Defense and decided that he is going to run for president. So it has finally been made official in the last 15 minutes or so. And
we know he's going to be elected the same way Mubarak was elected, 99.9%, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no chance for anybody to run against him already. I mean, it's just a ridiculous situation. What's also sad is people who were wearing the liberal and progressive and leftist shirts for so many years have also came on board and applauded the coup. But they're going to pay for it. They're going to pay for it, and they're going to realize that they were just being used. It's unfortunately, when you sleep with such a monster, you're only going to get eaten yourself. Yeah, that's true. And I think they misguided, and it's maybe their hatred to the Muslim Brotherhood, which really no secular person would support the constitution like the one that Morsi passed in Egypt. But still, there is a rule of law, and there is rule of decency and humanity, and you don't
don't do things that you don't want other people to do to you. Actually, this is one of my Christian upbringing. I think
no, absolutely.
Christ said that, you know, you don't expect people you don't do to people what you don't expect them to do to you. So, what do you think is the, I mean, it is really stupid policy what they're doing, because they are inviting violence. I mean, they are, at no time in the history of Egypt there was so much violence. Let's say that I read the report yesterday. There is all sorts of bombing, all sorts of attacks against, police stations, against military institutions. The list was long yesterday. I was surprised that they are really inviting violence, and that's not the way to go. That's not the way to build a civilized society. They're gonna destroy Egypt, and it might end up like what's happening in Syria now. What do you think?
I think that they have a lot of whether it's fake or true, that's another story. Confidence in themselves that Egypt cannot turn to what Syria is, and within that context, they are intentionally inviting violence. They are instigating violence, because it gives them a raison d'être to continue ruling the country the way they are. It gives them a raison d'être to have a military man at the head of the state. It's a game. It's a game they're playing, and the stakes are a whole country and a whole nation. But yes, they are inviting that, and they know what I think they know what they're doing.
They're doing it consciously, most probably.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Ehab, really, we thank you very much for being with us. Unless you have a message to our listener, final word.
Well, I want to tell the listeners that we have, unfortunately not in Vancouver, but in Ottawa, we have an action against what happened in Egypt this last week, and the sentencing of 529 people in front of Parliament Hill on Sunday at noon. And also here in Montreal today, we're going to have an action at basically the Palais de Justice, the complex of justice here in Montreal at 5 o'clock today, against to bring more attention to what's happening in Egypt. At the same time, I want to remind your listeners that the Gazas Ark project is going on, and we really ask for any support that people can give. So I hope they visit GazaArk.org and support us in any way they can. Because, as we mentioned, the population in Gaza is facing a lot of difficulty, and we have to do whatever we can to bring international attention and support to the plight of the people of Gaza.
Actually, I want to ask you one last question too about, I intended to before, but I want to ask you just for the next couple of minutes, if you can explain to us about the, and what's the objectives of the Egyptians worldwide for democracy and justice, and how people can support this organization, and if you can give us your website too.
Absolutely. When the coup happened in Egypt, a lot of Egyptians in Canada, I'm going to start with Canada, came together, and this group from coast to coast, some of the people that formed it are affiliated or were affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. Some others, like myself, are totally, actually they are at odds ideologically with the Muslim Brotherhood, but we came together and we formed the Egyptian-Canadian Coalition for Democracy, and as I said, it has presence in cities from coast to coast, from including Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Kingston, Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, and we were trying to get in contact with people all over the world that have groups, like-minded groups in different countries, and we got in contact with people in the United States and in Britain and in Denmark and in Austria and in Germany, Greece, Sweden, and we formed a a group worldwide, that is Egyptians Worldwide for Democracy and Justice, that is only to defend and coordinate our actions against this coup government in Egypt, and to make the people around the world and the governments around the world aware of what's happening in Egypt, and to bring support to all the activists who are the real people that are suffering, the activists in Egypt, who both, whether they are coming from a religious ideology or they're coming from a human rights, liberal ideology, there are many of them in Egypt that are standing now and paying the price under this very oppressive regime. So we don't consider ourselves the front line, but we are a support line for that is happening in Egypt. Both the Egyptian-Canadian Coalition for Democracy and the Egyptians Worldwide movement have websites. The Egyptian-Canadian Coalition for Democracy is eccd.ca. And the Egyptian Worldwide for Democracy and Justice is EW4, the number 4, EW4DJ.org. The goal and the hope here is to coordinate actions on a Canadian level and worldwide to expose the coup regime and stand up for democracy and for human rights in Egypt, no matter how difficult the situation becomes and how long it prevails.
Yeah, and for people who want more information, they can go to the website, and we will put the link to it on to the organization on our website when we post this show. The link to the Egyptians Worldwide for Democracy and Justice. We'll put it so people can learn more and do more support work. We thank you very much, Ehab, and keep up the good work. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for having me, and all the best to you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And that was Hannah Kawas talking with Ehab Lotayef, an Egyptian-Canadian poet and activist. And with that, we conclude another edition of The Voice of Palestine. Our final piece of music is by the late legendary Egyptian singer Sheik Imam, entitled Egypt, Rise Up. We dedicate this song to the progressive forces in Egypt and across the Arab world, for whom Sheik Imam remains a beacon of inspiration.
تاخدي زي زمان تعصي عدو وتعندي أمان أمان برم أفندي يا مصر
يا مصر قومي وشدي
الحيل كل اللي تتمنيه عندي للقهر يطويني ولا الليل أمان أمان برم أفندي الدم يجري في ماء النيل والنيل بيفتح على سجني الدم يجري في ماء النيل والنيل بيفتح على سجني والسجن يطرح غلة وطير نجوع ونتعرى ونبني الدم يجري في ماء النيل والنيل بيفتح على سجني والسجن يطرح غلة وطير نجوع ونتعرى ونبني يا مصر لسه عددنا كتير لا تجزعي من بأس الغير يا مصر لسه عددنا كتير لا تجزعي من بأس الغير يا مصر لسه عددنا كتير يا مصر لسه عددنا كتير لا تجزعي من بأس الغير يا مصر لسه عددنا كتير يا مصر لا تجزعي من بأس الغير يا مصر لسه عددنا كتير لا تجزعي من بأس الغير يا مصر ملوي قلوبنا الخير وحلمنا ورد مندي أمان 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 برم أفندي يا مصر قومي وشدي الحيل كل اللي تتمني والله عندي لا قهر يطويني ولا الليل أمان أمان برم أفندي يسعد صباحك يا جنينة يسعد صباح اللي رواكي يسعد صباحك يا جنينة يسعد صباح اللي رواكي يا غدرة من زرع ايدينا شربتي من بحر هواكي شربتي من كاس محبوبي وعشقتيني الأسمر نوبي شربتي من كاس محبوبي وعشقتيني الأسمر نوبي شربتي من كاس محبوبي أنا شربتي من كاس محبوبي وعشقتيني الأسمر نوبي شربت من كاس محبوبي وعشقتيني الأسمر نوبي وغسلت فيه بدني وتوبي وكتبت اسمه على زندي أمان أمان برم أفندي يا مصر قومي وشدي الحيل كل اللي تتمني عندي للقهر يطويني ولا الليل